Good morning, my friends and followers. I remain Edward Washroom, the tutor in Edward's Academy. This morning, we are going to learn how to estimate structural vector autoregression model. We are also learn how to interpret the coefficients, and before then, I will also expose to you the reasons behind the estimation of vector or structural vector autoregression model. Structural vector autoregression model is an advancement of vector autoregression models. The concept of VAR was made famous by the empirical work of Christopher Sim in 1982 in a book titled Modeling the Macroeconomic Reality. Christopher Sim in that book tried to model the VAR framework, and the VAR framework constitutes a rather general approach to modeling multivariate time series data, but a critical setback or drawback of the VAR framework is their inability to decompose or describe the contemporaneous relationships that exist among the variables under consideration. These become central issues in the use of impulse response and Byron's decompositions as a critical tool to unravel such anomaly. And the use of VAR in a multivariate equation modeling system is limited because the VAR framework is theoretical in nature and is not built or based on any known economic theories. So, on the basis of such limitation, it is expected that researchers should actually identify a more robust means of estimating structural parameters wherein restrictions will be placed on key macroeconomic variables. To estimate the structural VAR model, it is expected that the researcher is working on either monetary policy or fiscal policy framework. The monetary policy and fiscal policy framework being the main estimation requirements that the researchers intend to use VAR model is premised on one single fact, because in monetary and fiscal policy decisions, restrictions are being placed on key performance of some macroeconomic variables. Looking at it from the fiscal policy point of view, if the government anticipates a fall in private demand due to war or due to economic meltdown, the government will try to increase public expenditure through borrowing and increase in taxation. And in doing that, public deficit increases. And when public deficit increases, it's not expected that the increase in public expenditure by the government has increased the public deficit. That will be the anticipation of the people, but it may also be a wrong assumption, because in many cases, government will want to place restrictions when government realizes that the increase in public expenditure had actually constitutes an increase in public debt in a sane country. In such a situation, placing restrictions on the performance or the use or the implementations of most of the public expenditure framework of the government constitutes the structural VAR framework. In the monetary policy dimension, if government anticipates an increase in inflation, the central bank of any country will decide to actually increase the monetary policy rates to mop up the excess liquidity in circulation. And in doing that, inflation will continue to increase. And the same conclusion that people will come up with in such scenario is that the increase in monetary policy rates as a result of the continuous increase in inflation, like what we have in Nigeria, has also caused a further increase in inflation. But it may also be a wrong conclusion, because the inflationary situation or the inflation may actually be acting endogenously. The inflation, like the case of increase in public expenditure, may be acting endogenously. And to solve such problem, government will try to place restrictions on key areas that they want to place. Let me explain this in a different dimension. If government of a particular country decides to implement a fiscal policy measure of increasing government expenditure through road infrastructure, and government decides to place restriction on the use of a particular road over a period of time, such policy or such fiscal policy measure will be implemented by the government, but not on a basis that the government want to use such road or have access to that road for a particular important assignment. At that level, government will want to defer the restriction, defer the policies that they have placed on a particular road. At that level, replacing restrictions or adjusting the implementation of the policy is what the structural VAR framework actually intends to unravel. The structural framework places restrictions on government policies and make the government achieve what they intend to achieve. So let's go to my eView portal. Let me teach you how to place restrictions on how the structural VAR is being estimated. Recall that in my previous video I looked at how international trade affects economic growth in Nigeria using time series data spanning from 1980 to 2020. And representing international trade in this estimation will be export trade, import trade, while exchange rate will be introduced into the model as a key macroeconomic variable. Economic growth in this concept or in this estimation will be introduced or will be represented with the growth rates of gross domestic product for the period under investigation. So to begin, it's expected that you ought to have known your stationarity condition, the stationarity condition of the time series data is employed. It is also established that both Johansen trace and mass against statistics establish the absence of no cointegrating vector in the relationship you want to estimate. On that premise, you can now proceed to estimate the VAR. The VAR is the baseline model in estimating the structural VAR. To do that, you go to view, you go to estimate equation. So estimate VAR, you specify your variable GDP growth rate, the log of export rate, the log of import rate, and ESR. This is my model. I'm ready to move to actually identify the lag without changing any other thing. You click the OK button. You will now be exposed to vector auto-regression estimate. You move to view from this result. From this result, you move to lag structure. From lag structure, lag length criteria. From lag length criteria, lag to be selected. You leave it at this. Haven't identified that my AIC, there's a series in my AIC, there's a series in my SC, and there's a series in my HQ. So given this condition, I am actually using AIC as my baseline information criterion at lag 1. I'll proceed back to estimate. From estimate, I change the lag from lag 2 to lag 1 without changing any other thing. I hit OK. I will be exposed to this result. From this result, I will now proceed to prog. From prog, I go to estimate structural factorization. I will be exposed to this. At this point, we have too many restrictions within this particular restriction preset. So I'll leave it at the first one. A units, triangular, and B diagonal. Without changing any other thing, I hit the OK button. I will be exposed to a result that looks like this. This is my A model, while this is my B model. These are the coefficients of A matrix. We have the coefficient of A matrix. We have the coefficients of B matrix. These are the coefficient and the parameter of interest, and the log likelihood of 284.9439 is okay. In my next video, I will actually offer meaningful interpretation to this output. Thank you for subscribing and listening to me. Good morning, my friends and brothers.